Hello and welcome to Season 4, Episode 18 of Logicast, the AWS News podcast brought to you by Logicata. I'm Carl Robinson, CEO and co-founder of Logicata, and I'm joined, thankfully, today, now that he has his newfound status as a world-renowned conference speaker, he's still shown up today to record Season 4, Episode 18 of Logicast. It's John, as always. Goodall, how are you doing today, John?
Well, you've got to remember where you come from, haven't you? You've got to remember where you come from.
Back to your roots, back down to earth. Just for the listeners, in case they don't know, John did actually speak at the AWS Summit last week, which is his first major conference talk. So kudos to John on speaking about the serverless podcast workflow on the AWS community booth at last week's London Summit.
Which listeners of the podcast will no doubt know all about because I've spoken about it ad nauseum on here as well. So
Yes, we have indeed. But it was a tough slot that though, John. You were between the beer before the beer slot, weren't you? So
I don't know when they bring the beers out at the summit because I was on the 4:30 slot, and Susan, I think it was, said that it's a really tricky slot because it's right at the end of the day. People are kind of starting to leave because if they've got trains and things to catch to go a long way, they'll start to kind of go. The beers are coming out or are already out. Some of the after parties will have already started, and people will have left for those. And it's just. The whole thing just felt like a whole lot of blowing smoke, and then I still had 100 people turn up. So
plenty of bums on seats, so all good. Anyway, we're also
for the viewers. I feel I must clarify. Carl and I are not wearing the same shirt today. They're the same color, but they are not the same piece of swag. I mean, I think he sees that. I've got a ComSum shirt on
in case of
It's a thing. It's a thing.
Anyway, moving on from swag, which we often get sidetracked on, we're very lucky today to be joined by a special guest, AWS hero, Renato Lozio. How are you doing today, Renato?
Hi, I'm doing fine. I'm here in Berlin, finally a sunny day, so cannot complain. Yeah, I'm AWS data hero since 2020, I think. I have no idea why, but I've been actually playing with AWS technology for, about 15 years now. I started in 2010. So basically, I'm not an expert. I'm old. I'm just old. I've been playing with, I'm a lucky person that started playing with AWS when things were simple, when there were very few services, very few announcements, where basically you couldn't discuss 5 news every week because probably there were no 5 announcements every week. And the announcements were, I don't know, 2 paragraphs long, so it was quite easy to digest them. So anyway, I'm mostly working on databases, storage stuff, some serverless, and try to keep myself busy, working as a cloud architect for a US company, and love to write, mostly for InfoQ, and that's it. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, I did mention in our preamble that it's Renato's first time on Logicast, but it's not Renato's first time on Logicast. We've mentioned him many times and discussed many of his articles from InfoQ. Because it seems to do very well on SEO. Google picks up a lot of articles from InfoQ about AWS. So we've definitely discussed a number of your articles on the podcast before. It's great to have you on board to discuss other people's articles today, because we don't actually have any of yours in our selection. But we're going to talk about other people's articles.
Once upon a time, I did look at becoming an InfoQ editor because it's just open, like you're not paid for it or anything like that. I filled the format and they went, we like how you write, we'd love you to come and do it, here's kind of the requirements. And I looked at it and just went, that's entirely too much work, I'm not doing that.
Well, you never know. Now that you are a world-renowned conference speaker or whatever title you want to give yourself, perhaps you could get stuck into that again as well.
Oh, to have the time.
Is it quite an onerous task then, Renato, getting published on InfoQ?
I think it really depends what you want to do. If you target articles, you are an occasional contributor and you write long articles, usually 1,500, 2,000 words at least. And there's some review process. It basically means that an editor from InfoQ is going to pair with you and review the content, make sure it's accurate, target the innovators, early adopter audience, and so on. And that's up to you if you want to write an article. If you sometimes turn a session, that's like the trick is you had a successful idea for a talk and you suddenly turn into an article. That's an approach. And those are occasional contributors. Then there's the traditional editors that covers news. And that, yeah, you usually expect to write at least one news piece a week. There's short news pieces. You do it yourself, but it becomes kind of routine. But for me, it's a way to learn. I don't see it as an effort to kind of make money, mostly. I mean, you're not really out of that, but it's more a way to. I'm a lazy person at the end of the day. I need something that forces me to keep myself up to date. Whatever it is, used to be certification in the past. Now I'm doing that. I need to have something that, well, otherwise, yeah, documentation are there, video are there, but who has the time and almost all the way to go through them? Well, now I'm forced to, not forced, but kind of, I have one reason more to go through, follow the news and follow the feeds. And that's what I love.
Sounds good. Just a question. You touched on certification there. We had an AWS hero on a couple of episodes ago. I think it didn't have any certifications. I'm curious, do you have any current certifications?
I did my very first certification in 2013. At some point, I had almost all of them when they were still not 15, before becoming a hero, actually. And then I started to let them expire. And then I tried a couple of them out of curiosity. So I did, like, I don't know, the practitioner AI recently, just out really to see how they were. But I wouldn't consider myself certified at the moment. Yes, I have a couple of them, but not really the main one, and I'm not really putting effort at the moment in certification.
No worries. Well, I guess what we're learning is that heroes seem to be kind of beyond certification, really. Once you get to that level, you just don't need them anymore. So.
I don't think it's much that. It's just that I find it really hard to. I'm really curious. I find it really hard to research. I mean, recertifying one time is okay, but as I said, I'm old. When you have had more than 10 years of certification, is like, I don't know.
Here we go
if
again.
I had to try now something new, I would actually prefer a new certification, something completely different that I have no clue about, and try that more than really go again through. But I'm not saying they're not useful. It's just that I'm not that interested at the moment. As well, I'm not working for a partner, or I don't have any real advantage in having them. I mean,
I was just about to say that if you're working for a partner, then it's obviously in the interest of the partner for their employees to be certified. But if you're working in a just a non-partner organization, then there's not quite so much value to them. So
I mean, if you didn't make me do them, I wouldn't bother.
Make you do them. I love it. It's like I just conjuring up images in my head now of the methods of making you do these things. But perhaps we shouldn't discuss that on the podcast. Anyway, on that note, as regular listeners to the podcast will know, we're not here to learn about my management techniques. We are here to learn about AWS news. Once a week, I curate a list of AWS news I share via my weekly AWS News Roundup newsletter. And you're right, Renato, there are a lot of articles. Sometimes it takes a lot of trimming to trim that newsletter down to something which is an acceptable length for a newsletter. And then other times around reInvent and Reinforce, there are no articles whatsoever. So it makes doing this weekly quite challenging. But there we go. But this week was a good week for news. It was a week where we did need to trim the newsletter down a bit. And John and I have, or John really, has selected 5 articles from the newsletter, which we shared with Renato, that we'd like to discuss with you today. So the first one of those is an article from the AWS Compute blog. And the title is AWS Lambda introduces tiered pricing for Amazon CloudWatch logs and additional logging destinations. So Lambda, John, your chosen specialized subject of serverless. Well, one of them, the biggest one, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you say serverless, people think Lambda, they think function. So yeah, that's kind of fair.
Yeah. So tell us about the new tiered pricing for CloudWatch logs.
The tiered pricing is less interesting, to be really honest, than the additional logging destinations. The tiered pricing, okay, we'll do that to start with, just because it's kind of like the headline item, right? By default, Lambda will, as you know, up until the 1st of May, it would have just spewed its logs out into CloudWatch, and you would have paid 50 cents per gigabyte once you got out of the first 5 gig free tier for the ingest, and that is actually really quite expensive. And the only way you could prevent Lambda from doing that was to take its permissions away, which is just balmy. Like, you couldn't say, I don't want you to do that. You had to block it from doing it by taking the IAM permissions away from the role. And that's nuts. That's really nuts. And when you had, things like roles being created automatically for you by something like SAM, then that becomes really problematic, because I like the tools that do these sorts of things for you, and then the default Lambda roles get attached. You just kind of have to worry about it. But yeah, that was balmy. What this announcement is saying in terms of the pricing reduction is, rather than it being a flat fee across the board, AWS have done what they do, and they've given you a reduction based on a tiered pricing. And tiered pricing for logs and things is common in other areas of AWS. They do tiered pricing for things. If you look at something like SQS, that's a good example where you pay an X amount and the per message price gets cheaper as you go. And they've done that here. And that's not uncommon for other logging solutions as well. It's only really at big scale that you're going to feel any benefit from this, because the first 10 terabytes a month, that's ridiculous, is still 50 cents per gig. Okay, fine. You could use infrequent access and cut that in half, but whatever. And then it goes down to 25 cents per gigabyte after the next 20 terabytes, and then the next 20 terabytes is 10, and then once you're using over 50 terabytes a month, it's 5p per gig. Cool. So you're only really going to see any kind of price reduction at really stupid scale. It's a good thing that they're doing it. It's fine. I don't hate that, but it's kind of like, whatever. Who's really generating 50 terabytes of Lambda logs every month? I mean, it's not a large number of people, I would have thought, and it lends more credence to the evidence that I've seen that no one's Lambda bill is higher than their logging bill, because I've never seen that. But there we go. That's okay, whatever. I like a price reduction, but it's only really big people that are going to see a benefit from that. What's more interesting is you can now send your logs to other places. You don't have to send them to CloudWatch to then send them on to somewhere else. You can send them directly to S3, and the pricing for that is it's a wee bit cheaper than sending it to CloudWatch, because you don't have the ingest fees, which is just silly. So the first 10 terabytes is 25 cents per gig, and it's a little bit cheaper. It's kind of, it's sort of the tiering is a bit cheaper, and that's fine. Or you can send it to Firehose, Data Firehose, as it's now called. It used to be called Kinesis Firehose, I think, but it's now called just Data Firehose. And that's really cool. Why is that really cool? Because CloudWatch logs, I think they're okay, but they're never any better than okay, and they've never been any better than okay. You might want to use some sort of third-party logging tool, and you might not want to have to do some sort of instrumentation in your own code base in order to achieve this. You might want to just do, print and have that go somewhere else. Now you can do that without having to send it to CloudWatch logs first. You send it to Firehose, and then you can just, send it to, I don't know, -0 or Honeycomb or whoever, much more directly.
Other logging providers are available.
Oh, -0 is on the brain because it's who Raphael works for. So that one's on the brain. But yeah, others are available. But it's cheaper than going to CloudWatch, even after this price reduction, and external tools are still better, in my opinion. So that's much more interesting. And then the article goes on to kind of talk about, here's how you configure it and all the rest of it. And hopefully your Terraform provider and your SAM and all the rest of it have been updated by now, so that you can kind of do this in your IAC. But I like this. I like this a lot.
What are your thoughts on this one, Renato? Anything to add?
I absolutely have to agree that the most interesting part is the new destination more than the pricing, because even Amazon this time made me actually laugh when I read the announcement, because the key point there is that there's the free tier, but then things scale only at big scale. I mean, the example they give as a saving is, for example, if you generate 60 terabyte of Lambda logs monthly in CloudWatch logs, cost will decrease by 58% from 30,000 K per month to 12.5K. So that's more or less saying that it almost says that feature a name for the customer that required it. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not useful, but I doubt that many people are going to really benefit at that scale. Then again, yes, it's a price reduction, no complaint. But the cool part is the new to destination. Even just S3, even without doing anything fancy, I think you might have as well an easier way to adopt inside the team, that people are very familiar with S3 APIs, how to get data, how to process them in Athena or whatever else. So just store them there. Sometimes it's easier than CloudWatch. That sometimes is a bit more tricky to manage.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of sending logs directly to S3 for any service that will support it. And maybe that's my history in SQL-based ETL systems, but I like looking at logs with SQL. I'm quite good at it. I do it quite a lot, and it's significantly cheaper than CloudWatch. Okay, if you're not that good with SQL, Athena's a bit of a faff, but it's one of those. It's worth learning how to do it because the world kind of runs on SQL still, and it saves you a bunch of money. And even now, even after the price reduction, it's still cheaper to send it to S3.
And if you're not that good with SQL, go to your favorite chat bot, which is, of course, Amazon Q, and ask it to write you a SQL query for whatever it is that you're looking to do. But yeah, other chat.
I thought he was going to say, if you're not that good with SQL, learn.
No, you don't need to learn anything nowadays. You just go to a chat interface and ask.
Vibe code my logs, thanks.
And hope that the answer it gives you is correct, especially if you don't know what you're looking for, that it might not be, because AI does make mistakes, as we all know. But anyway, on that note, it sounds like both of you are pretty happy about that change to Lambda logging. So sticking with the subject of Lambda, this one is purely about pricing, as I understand it. Another article about Lambda pricing. This one's from the AWS Compute blog as well. AWS Lambda standardizes billing for init phase. So, John, I'll come to you again first on this one. Init phase.
For the listeners, I apologize. For the viewers, you'll have seen his mush when he said that. Okay, for the uninitiated, and the article kind of explains this, Lambda has 3 key phases: init, invoke, and shutdown. And historically, init wasn't chargeable. And then it was under certain circumstances and certain runtimes and all that kind of jazz. But, if you look at traditional, say, your Python zip Lambdas, for argument's sake, the init phase, you didn't pay for that, which was nice. And why is that important? Well, you could preload things like getting environment variables out of Secrets Manager and that kind of thing in the init phase by putting them outside of the handler. This was kind of recommended by AWS. They told you to do this because it meant that you reduced the number of times you're calling out to Secrets Manager, and that has a cost. Retrieving secrets has a cost, and it also meant that your warm start performance was better because it was caching those things in one memory. Basically, they're held in the execution environment from one execution to the next, and you weren't having to refetch those between executions. Wonderful. And then the invoke phase was chargeable because that was the bit where it called your handler and did kind of the business logic, for lack of a better term. I hate that nonsense term, but it's, here's the thing that it needs to do. And then obviously the shutdown phase was free because that's then, I'm done. And then it worked out how much it's going to charge you. The article does actually say, and I can't find it here, but there was a couple of runtimes that did start to charge for the init phase because they took a very long time to init. So I'm thinking things like Java and containers and that kind of thing, because they take a long time to do it, and it was just sort of a little bit different, and there's more to spin up under the covers and all that jazz. And now what this is saying, and this is why I don't like this announcement particularly, is now everything has the init phase as billable. I get it. It's a standard. They've standardized it, but I just don't like having to pay for something that I didn't have to pay for previously. On the one hand, I think it's being sold as a standardization thing, and on the other, people were absolutely abusing this. You could get free compute in the init phase. 100% they were doing that. But this is a $1 billion company. You can't tolerate me being a little bit cheeky. No, really.
Oh, it's a company that knows how to make money, so
woe betide
you're only going to be able
to make any.
You're only going to be able to trick them for so long before they cotton on. What are your thoughts on this one, Renato?
Conflicted. On the positive side, I really like standardization. Whatever is just one way everywhere. That's fine, and I almost don't like it from a practitioner point of view. The idea that this will force us to think much more about cold start, thinking about how to improve the init. It's not, it's free, it's going to take up 8 seconds, who cares? It's more like, okay, how can we do it better? How can we not throw resources for no reason? On the other side, first I don't like price increases, and that is at the end is a price increase. even if, of course, the title doesn't say that. And that's the part that I like less. I mean, I always prefer if they're open and say, well, we start to charge the interface. That's the real message of that. That we standardize is already vague. I mean, people shouldn't read the full article to figure out what's going on. I know you receive as well those notifications. Probably, if you are affected, you have probably received something by now, and that's cool. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. I understand the point as well that you could take advantage of it. I agree as well with John that almost all Hyperscaler probably has better way as well to block if someone is taking too much advantage of it. So I don't think that's generally the solution to avoid. I don't buy the idea that the solution to block someone abusing the platform is to have everyone else paying it for it. That's the thing. It's hard to. But yeah, I'm not 100% convinced. I want to see some metrics. I saw data from different camps coming. Some people saying that it's not going to affect you that much. So usually most people won't notice the difference. Probably true. I have no clue as well how unpredictable can be that at scale. Because at the end, until now I haven't really talked too much about how often. Yes, I look at some metrics, but I have no real idea how much in percentage that's going to affect me. I need to do some math, and again, I'm lazy. I don't want to do it, and but yeah, I'm not super. I mean, I don't think anyone is super happy about it, but that's yeah. I didn't expect it. Probably, I didn't actually even think too much about that difference before, but.
Yeah, this one just feels like it's going against the customer obsession to me. This is something that's come out of the accountancy department, I think.
Maybe the customer with the $30,000 a month logging bill might feel this one a bit, but
yeah, it's. I like standardization generally because it means that you don't have to have these weird conversations with finance people that don't quite understand the nuance. And previously, functions configured with custom runtimes, okay, provisioned concurrency, okay, you sort of expected that one, and OCI packaging or containers included that in their duration. So as of the 1st of August this year, everyone's going to have to pay more for your Lambdas. Hopefully not a lot more. Hopefully you're not massively impacted by this. And hopefully your Lambda build is small enough that you're not going to notice anyway.
Yep. I guess if you're not lazy, do the maths. But maybe when you do the maths, you'll have realised that perhaps it wasn't worth bothering in the first place because the impact.
Yeah, that's one of the funny ones. Lambda pricing is so aggressively cheap; it's not worth spending the brain time to do it because your effective salary cost is higher than the increase. So just forget about it and move on.
Exactly.
Go do something that earns money.
And move on we shall to the third article for this week, which is an article on the Cloud Operations blog, all about the introduction of just-in-time node access using AWS Systems Manager. So, Renato, I'm going to come to you first on this one to get your thoughts on this. Are you a user of Systems Manager yourself?
No, that's the first thing. No, okay. When I read the piece, I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And I understand that there are organizations that if you have thousands of nodes and you need to give certain level of government permission, that I think that the problem I have with security in general with AWS is how hard it is to keep up with all the different options and decide which one of the available one fits your specific scenario. And if you are big enough that you have a security team that takes care of that, probably that's amazing. And just-in-time node access, my address and my feeling, maybe I'm not an expert on the field, but my feeling is help you flag a couple of checkbox in certain lists, so you can claim you don't have a credential on the node, and that's always a good thing. 100% behind that. I have only two concerns. One is I read the article, and after the full article, I'm still not entirely sure how it works. But that's me. That's That's my background. You asked me about my certification. My security certification expires many years ago, so probably that shows up now. The second problem I had is that this is another feature that, if I got it right, it costs it's designed for cases where you have hundreds or thousands of nodes, but it costs $10 per node per month.
So that's going to add up, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not in love with the pricing on this one, I must say, but I get quite excited about this sort of thing because I am a big nerd. This was something that I got a little bit of early sight of as a community builder because, you know, as listeners know, well, this is public now.
Oh yeah.
This is public now, and the fact that CBs get access to NDA'd stuff without saying what it is, you know, ahead of time is again, it's a published benefit of the scheme, right? So this caused quite a stir when we got kind of like tiny little snippets of this, and this is really cool. This is really, really, really cool, but it's quite expensive. Why would you need this? Well, it's the whole standing access to stuff problem, and this is just kind of taking it to another level, right? So if you use Session Manager for accessing your EC2s, which you absolutely should be doing because, you know, static SSH keys should just go in the bin at this point. You should be using Session Manager because it's better. Cool. Oh, I want to do it from the command line. You can. Shut up. So it's just better. Cool. You don't, however, want your entire SRE team, and as Renata says, this is much more useful for kind of your large enterprises, as it were, than your little SMBs. You, by and large, don't want your entire fleet of SREs and platform folks and DevOps engineers and whatever else you want to call them having standing access to all the servers at all of the time, particularly when it's not, say, an application that they work on regularly, but, you know, they're part of an on-call rotation, for instance, or you have like a pod-based scheme where you have your two that you're kind of primary on, and then you have a base level of understanding of lots of other applications across the estate or across your customer base. And that's pretty common too. And to be really honest, a lot of on-call problems tend to be really basic stuff that you don't need to know lots about the application. You just kind of need to know, here's where the log files are, and I know how to read them, and I know how to look at how much disk is available, that kind of thing. This solves for that kind of problem quite nicely, because if you can't get hold of anybody in the standard sets of people that need access to these machines, or you have a really, really restrictive policy that says that nobody has access for X period of time, this covers for that. Because what you do is you don't have standing access via your IAM role or via your IAM policies. It's actually your IDC role, which we should be doing, to access these machines. You have to request access, and then in some cases it gets auto-approved, subject to policy. Some cases it goes via a platform manager or whoever to then approve it, and then you have access for a period of time. I think the periods of time are quite long in some cases, but, you know, it's still not standing access. So it's a big improvement in my book.
There's actually one thing you mentioned that I think is worth to highlight, is that there's the concept of approver, and you can integrate easily. I mean, you can integrate with as everything. Easily is just in the press release, but you can integrate with Slack, Team, and that really, as a concept, helps a lot. The idea that you can submit the request and someone just approve it is quite a powerful trick in a large organization. I think there's as well a free tier of one per. I read something, but I'm not entirely sure about that. I don't know if you remember that, but you can actually try it out with something for free. I think it's one account per region.
It's a free, it's a free trial, so it's not one of those free tiers forever. It will be free for a while, and then you like the feature and go, oh, brilliant, we'll use this. Here's a bill, sir. So I'm not a fan of the pricing because it's not cheap, but the functionality is great, and I get that, you know, R&D needs to be paid for, and this would have taken a lot of work to put together. But generally, I like this. I used to work, you know, for my sins, I've worked for banks and finance shops and those sorts of things. And I can absolutely see those sorts of places really liking this and really leaning into this, because your InfoSec people, where previously we've had long-standing SSH access and they hated that and they were constantly rotating keys and that just annoyed everybody. Problem goes away. I no longer have, you know, standing access. When I have a list of servers that I'm already allowed to access, I just do it and it generates an auto approval and it happens. Or if it's something outside of my normal area of work because it's not my pod, for argument's sake, then it goes off to an manager who gets it via Slack, and they just say, yes, go. So that's really cool.
That's that's cool. The only thing I find it always hard. I mean, I fully get the message as well about research and the cost and targeting the enterprise. You need to get the money out of it. The problem I have always is find the right balance between teaching the community, teaching the users the best approach for security versus the cost of doing it. Every time when you think about customer obsession, the customer is not taking the best approach because it's too costly. You're crossing a line. I mean, you cannot always give it for free, but you need to find a way that certain features are there almost by default that you encourage from day one, because this is not something that from day one a developer is going to use.
No, it's a very good point, and this isn't going to solve the average citizen developer, for lack of a better term, just having admin on everything, because that's not going away.
But yeah.
But I think in security, it's never about the cost of doing it. It's about the cost of not doing it, isn't it? So I guess in those organizations, who have had a breach, I'm not going to mention any, but it was in the headline news over the bank holiday weekend in the UK here that a major UK retailer had a ransomware.
Oh, yes. I'm familiar with that because we couldn't buy any bloody school clothes for the kids, because that's where we get a lot of it from.
Yeah.
But how is my day job affecting my ability to buy things? Stop it.
But the hackers probably know what it was you were trying to buy and where you were trying to send it to. So,
yes, you can send me all the gingham dresses you like for the kids. That's fine.
But yeah, it's the security fear cell, isn't it? It's the cost of not doing it versus the cost of doing it. So. Anyway, on that note, let's move along to our fourth article for this week. Sticking with security, we are on the AWS security blog, and this article is entitled "How to Use AWS Transfer Family and GuardDuty for Malware Protection." So, Renato, I'm going to come to you first on this one because I think you had a fairly strong opinion on this particular article.
Okay, my strong opinion is not much on the article. It's really, I'm as much as I can, I try to stay away from transfer family, almost all from
That's fair. That's very fair.
And I somehow feel that anyone who is using it deserves the pain of having to manage. Then again, I don't want to go again through how costly it is, because here is fair. If you really need a FTP server in 2025, you kind of deserve to pay for it. So I'm fine with that. And I get the idea that that's jokes apart, is that if you upload something to a platform, whatever that platform is on the cloud, you should have some automatic way to scan that item. I mean, it shouldn't be now an exception, should be the default. Should be that whatever you use transfer family, whatever you use S3, if someone uploads something to your service from a third party, from a customer, from a partner, whatever, some due diligence is there, and GuardDuty is amazing for that. What I find not funny, but I have many scenarios where I'm troubleshooting cases with AWS related, for example, to Media Convert or their own services, where you want to upload a file for them. And of course, they never use transfer family. They, of course, share with you and upload time-based S3 link, where everything applies the same way, but without. So that's why I don't like about transfer family. This article is actually pretty good in the sense that shows you a way to do something that was already available. There's nothing new. It's just that before you were using a machine to do that, and now is pretty transparent. And I'm really, really in favor of all those, wouldn't call really advanced article, but that shows you how to put the different pieces together and how to build a solution. Now, maybe a bit my editor part is coming in. What I don't like is the title and the first paragraph, because the first paragraph gives you the idea what you're trying to achieve. I mean, the normal user on AWS has no idea what you're talking about reading the title. I mean, transfer family is not just FTP, SFTP, but that's what they're doing in that example. And it's not clear that you're doing an upload. So the first time I saw that article, I had no clue what it was, from the headline, what the article was about. I mean, I knew we service, but I had no idea what he was trying to achieve. That's the only concern I had. The solution architecture and the workflow to me are amazing. I love those examples, those templates, those approaches that give you, a solution. It's kind of building block with Lego as usual. Now probably with mentioned before with Amazon Q, you can try to to replicate it, but I wouldn't go that way. I mean, having template that have been tested is a better way. And as well, what I love is sometimes you have something already in place, you can improve it. Sometimes you just do it as they do, but at least you have someone like, it's not anymore as, oh, that was my idea, and try to convince your CEO is worth, but oh, that's how you do it. That's what they told you to do it. That's either I did it before and I praise myself, say, look, I did almost the same, or we have the better solution that we can implement. So I really love those ideas. What I don't like, I wouldn't use SFTP, and I still have to find really, apart from a customer coming and say, well, I pay you only if you expose SFTP server to upload the data to you. But usually my approach is more like trying to convince you to move away from an SFTP server than, but that's just me.
I guess it's the cost of re-architecting the app. If you've got a legacy app that's been using SFTP forever, and you're going
to. What scares me is that I saw people that build startups and web application in 2015, 2020 that they have today a SFTP server, and they're complaining how much they're paying for that service on AWS, and I still believe that they deserve to pay for it. So that's me. And one of them, I have to say, no, it's actually a tax that they didn't think too much when they had credits on the startup program on Accelerate. So it was like, oh, a few $100 a month for a SFTP server, who cares? Well, now, now they care, but that's
it's always easier when you're spending someone else's money.
Steady. We'll get into the socio-political side of things in a minute. This is quite a funny one. And it's honestly, it's a shame that this came up now, because in about 3 weeks' time, we've got another guest on who did a talk about building basically this for some big UK insurance company. And it would have been really cool to get his opinion on this one. But it's basically what he built, which is really cool. And that's one of those, oh, I did that. Oh, I did it right. Cool. Which is always nice. Yes, the SFTP needs to go in the bin. But if you take the whole transfer family thing out for a minute, there's lots of other ways of putting things in S3 buckets, and all of this, aside from the SFTP thing, still applies, because it's file has hit bucket. That has been scanned and we're reacting to it. The only real problem I have with this, and this is a really good walkthrough and it's a really nice architecture, the only problem I have with this is, why do I have to build this myself? Why do I have to build the whole quarantining thing myself? Why can't you do that for me? Because, that's kind of the point, isn't it? And maybe that'll happen. Maybe there'll be a managed quarantine at some point in the nearish future, because AWS have access to all the files and know where everything is. An S3 bucket is logically isolated anyway. So, maybe this is one of those, we want to move it over here so that it's obvious for humans to look at, as opposed to just there's a metadata tag that says don't use this, I guess.
Well, watch this space. Maybe in 3 weeks I'll have announced that and we can talk to him about that. Hey, that thing you built?
Didn't it do that?
It's redundant now, yeah. Hopefully not. We should not jest. Anyway, on that note, let's move along to our final article for this week. It's an article on CNBC. The title is AI Data Center Boom Isn't Going Bust, but the Pause is Trending at Big Tech Companies. So this is an article not just about AWS, but I think it also includes reference to Microsoft and Google as well. I think a number of big data center contracts have been pulled recently, which has caused ripples, I guess, in the data center industry. So this article is a reaction to that. Is the AI boom slowing down because AWS and Microsoft are slowing down their acquisition of data center space? So what are your thoughts on this one, John?
I'm not worried. I'm not worried. Obviously, I don't make money building data centers, so why would I be worried? This is the spend for these sorts of things is always cyclic, right? We talk about this every few weeks, where it'll be so and so has invested in a unmothballing a nuclear power plant next to their new data center, or such and such has got a big tax break, so they put a big data center somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Wonderful. And then every so often we hear cloud repatriation, or AI is going away again, or the spend's going down. Whatever. Don't care. This is one of those. It comes in waves. It happens every few months, and to an extent that's kind of driven by stock price performance, because those sorts of things are reported, I think, quarterly. So money gets shuffled around on balance sheets every so often, somewhat arbitrarily, just so that numbers look better at a convenient time in the year. So it says this as well, right? This is a reshuffling of the deck in an environment where blah 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 blah, everything needs to be strategic. Okay, cool, not worried.
Renato, anything to add there?
I actually think I even wonder if there's really news there, if it's just a bit of cherry picking. I mean, okay, here the message is, okay, AWS and Microsoft pull out, or at least they decided not to stick to some pre-arranged things signed years in advance for releases and things like that. Now, I'm just thinking that, and of course, the reaction of both the cloud provider was, oh, well, that's not really true. Sometimes we give up some, we invest in other regions, as always happen. I have no experience, no knowledge to say which side is actually right here. Probably might be even halfway to the truth, but is yes, I am 100% sure that as much as they are good in forecasting, I think now AWS has over 100, what is 110, 115, I can't remember easy. I don't know how many regions, a few more to be built, other already planned. I'm pretty sure that things shuffle a bit according to cost of energy and as good as they are predicted, there might be a few data centers in there that scale up and down according to the next forecast for the next few years. They are even adding what easy now in Northern Virginia that is not even in Northern Virginia, whatever. But what I mean is, I have no looking at the data from outside. I have no idea if they're really scaling down, or if it's simply something cyclical, or maybe even nothing is really happening. Yes, they're giving up something in exchange for something else. No idea. I'm not worried. I mean, I don't really see, even if they were scaling down, it doesn't mean that they're scaling down the number of data center, or that the growth is going to be single digit anytime soon. So why should we be worried? Maybe it's actually better. Maybe we're better users of existing resources, or who knows?
Well, with NVIDIA now bringing out these 120 kilowatt racks, that perhaps they just don't need as many racks as they previously had forecast. There's still just as many workloads, and the growth is still there, but more efficient use of data center space. So.
Yeah, really raising good point as well, because it's hard to forecast how much. I mean, there are too many variables: size of the rack, size of the number of CPU, number of GPU, cost of energy.
Yeah, well, the whole Graviton thing as well, up to the 4th generation of Graviton now. And I think I saw in an announcement at the summit that around about 50% of all servers in AWS data centers are now running Graviton, which gives a better price performance ratio, which again, if you're forecasting that 5 years ago, would you have known that the adoption would have been so high? So lots of variables. So
these sorts of things are decided way ahead of time, and by people much smarter than the three of us. And the article does touch a little bit on the pachyderm in the corner, the tariffs, because it's primarily the US that they're talking about these projects kind of slowing and pausing. They're not talking about them in Southeast Asia and all the rest of it, and every other place that we've spoken about reasonably recently getting like a new region and what have you. So it does touch on that, and that will probably having some sort of impact, because if the price of getting chips out of China doubles, then obviously you're going to move some things around and slow some projects down. That's kind of goes without saying, really. So yeah, it does touch on that as well, which you sort of expect, if I'm honest.
But the press loves a bit of FUD. fear, uncertainty, and doubt. They thrive on it.
No.
And so do we as readers. That's why the press loves it, because we all love a bit of, whoa, what's happening? Anyway, on that note, we have reached the end of our time for season 4, episode 18 of Logicast. So if you're still listening, thank you. If you've enjoyed it, tell your friends. We are available to download wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to see the funny faces I'm pulling at John at certain points, then we are also available to watch on YouTube. Thank you, John, as always, for your inputs, despite your new lofty status as a global tech speaker. And thank you very much, Renato, for joining us and sharing your insights and opinions as well. It's been great to meet you and have you on after having spoken about so many of your articles in the past.
Thank you to both of you. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. So thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Logicast for you. See you next time.
Bye.